I sent his new wife the truth about our abusive past, and she believed me. She thought she married a good man. I knew she hadn't. When I found out she was pregnant, the panic hit me like a freight train. I had the court records, the photos, the journal entries, proof of what he really was. I could have walked away, stayed silent, and let the past stay buried. But what if he hadn't changed? What if the next bruise wasn't mine, but hers or their babies? I had one shot to stop history from repeating. So I sent her everything. But to understand why, you need to know what I lived through. When I met him, he wasn't a monster. That's the part people never get. He was charming, attentive, even funny in that self-deprecating way that makes you feel special for choosing him. He knew exactly how to wrap himself in vulnerability to make me feel like I was the only one who ever truly understood him. He told me he'd had a rough childhood. He cried once, actual tears, when he said he didn't think he was worthy of love. I wish I could say I saw the red flags right away, but the truth is I didn't even know they were flags until I was already drowning. The emotional abuse started like slow poison. He'd make jokes about how I dressed, who I texted, how I laughed too loudly. At first I laughed with him. Then I started shrinking. I stopped wearing lipstick. I apologized for interrupting. I stopped meeting up with friends because he just missed me too much. He convinced me I was too sensitive, too clingy, too much. And I believed him. Then came the money. He said my job didn't pay enough and that he could manage our finances better. I handed over control because I thought that's what couples did. Soon my debit card stopped working. He said I was irresponsible, that I must have overspent. He tracked every dollar I spent like I was a child. Eventually, he stopped giving me money altogether and told me to get creative if I needed anything. And then, like all storms that build quietly, came the violence. The first time he hit me, he cried afterward. He dropped to his knees and begged me not to leave, said he was under stress, said he needed me, that it would never happen again. And I still can't believe this sometimes. I stayed, not because I thought it was okay, but because I was already so small, so far from the person I used to be, that I couldn't remember how to leave. But it didn't stop. It escalated. I started hiding bruises under sleeves and sunglasses. I kept my mouth shut at family dinners and forced smiles in group photos. I felt like a ghost trapped inside a life that wasn't mine anymore. It wasn't until he threatened me with a loaded weapon that everything unraveled. That was the moment I realized if I didn't leave, I wouldn't survive. The police got involved. He was arrested. I gave a victim impact statement in court with shaking hands. He was sentenced to probation and permanently banned from owning firearms. I moved out, changed my number, went to therapy and therapy again and again. I started writing everything down, every moment I could remember, because it helped me make sense of it. That binder became my lifeline, a scrapbook of survival, and then I put it all in storage, out of sight. I thought maybe finally the nightmare was over, but then she came into the picture, and everything came rushing back. After the trial, I moved in silence. Healing wasn't some glorious transformation. It was slow, raw, and often ugly. I didn't wake up one day feeling free. Most days I still felt like I was looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next message, the next unexpected knock, the next explosion. But therapy helped. Not all at once, but piece by piece. My therapist encouraged me to document everything, not just the abuse, but my thoughts, my nightmares, the tiny victories. At first, it felt pointless. Why relive it all on paper when I was trying so hard to forget? But I kept writing, page after page, sometimes just a sentence, sometimes an entire memory. I added screenshots of messages he sent, photos of bruises I'd once hidden from the world, hospital paperwork, police reports, notes from friends who suspected something but didn't know how to ask. And somehow, the more I put it down, the more it loosened its grip on me. I started organizing the pages, adding sticky notes, printing emails, even decorating the margins like a twisted scrapbook. It sounds strange, maybe even a little dark, but that binder became my companion. It wasn't just a record of the worst years of my life, it was proof that I survived them, that I wasn't crazy, that it happened. I kept it hidden away in a box at the back of my closet at first, like a secret I wasn't ready to share. But when I met my now husband and we moved in together, I decided to pack it up and store it in a unit across town, out of sight, but never out of mind. I told myself I didn't need it anymore. I was safe now. I had love, stability, a life. Still, some nights I'd lie awake and wonder, what if someone else was next? What if he found another version of me? Someone soft, trusting, and unprepared. Years passed. I tried to forget. Then, one day, her name popped up on social media. I hadn't thought about her in years, but I recognized the smile instantly. She'd married him. The same man who once pinned me to the floor for talking back. Yeah, the man who broke my phone in half because I didn't answer fast enough. The man who held a gun to the wall beside my head and laughed when I screamed. And now she was pregnant. I stared at the photo for what felt like forever. Her glowing, his arm wrapped around her, and a tiny baby bump between them. A happy couple in the filtered light of Instagram. My blood ran cold. I knew what he was capable of. I'd lived it. I had proof, locked away in a dusty box in storage. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept seeing her smile, kept hearing his voice in my head, the way it turned when no one else was around. I thought of the child, the innocent life that could be entering a nightmare. And for the first time in years, I opened the storage unit. I pulled the binder out of the box with shaking hands. The weight of it hit me all over again. I had buried the past, but maybe it was time to dig it up. Nah, not for me, for her, for the life she still had a chance to escape. I sat on the floor of that storage unit for hours, binder in my lap, heart racing like it used to when I heard his car pull into the driveway. The air was thick and dusty, but I didn't notice. All I could think about was her. She had no idea. I remembered her from high school, kind, quiet, smart, the kind of person who always helped clean up after events, even when no one asked. We were never close friends, but I remembered the way she smiled at people like she meant it, the way she treated everyone with the same gentle warmth. And now she was married to him, the same man who once told me, eyes cold and flat, that no one would ever believe me if he spoke up. I didn't want to interfere, believe me, I didn't. I didn't want to open old wounds or throw myself into chaos again. But I couldn't shake the image of her, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, maybe laughing at a joke he told, maybe thinking he'd changed, maybe trusting him the way I once did, right before everything crumbled. I tried to talk myself down. Maybe he really did change. Maybe therapy worked. Maybe he found God or accountability or whatever it is people like him claim when they want a clean slate. But that binder, it didn't lie, and neither did my gut. Because the thing about people like him is they don't change. They adapt. They learn new ways to hide. They pick different types of prey. Maybe she was just another version of me, a softer target, someone less likely to push back, someone more isolated. Or maybe she was strong but unaware, and unaware is dangerous when you're living with someone like him. Then I saw it, a baby registry link, shared publicly. Their baby was due in a few months. That sealed it for me. It wasn't just her I was worried about anymore, it was the child. A child born into the hands of a man who once slammed a door so hard it shattered a mirror and cut open my arm. A man who could smile at strangers and then spit venom behind closed doors. I kept asking myself, what would I have wanted? What if someone had known what I was going through and had the power to warn me? Would I have believed them? Would I have left sooner? Could it have saved me from years of trauma? I didn't have answers, but I knew silence wasn't one. I picked up the binder again and flipped through it. The police reports, the texts, the photos, my own handwriting shaky but honest. Every piece of it was truth, frozen in time. I didn't know what her truth looked like, but I knew she deserved a choice. And she couldn't make it without the whole picture. So I made a decision. One I knew could change everything. I was going to warn her, carefully, respectfully, but clearly. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to ruin him, but because no woman deserves to be trapped in the kind of nightmare I barely escaped from alive. And if there was even a chance I could help her avoid it, I had to try. I didn't sleep the night I made the decision. I just sat there, binder open, pages scattered around me like pieces of a crime scene only I remembered. My heart wouldn't stop racing, part fear, part adrenaline, part the sheer weight of what if I was wrong. But the bigger question haunted me louder. What if I was right? I knew I couldn't just drop this on her out of nowhere. If he saw it first, if he intercepted the message or twisted the story before she had a chance to read it, I could be putting her in even more danger. I needed to be smart, quiet, precise. So I didn't send it directly. Instead, I reached out to a mutual friend, someone we both trusted, someone he didn't have contact with. It wasn't an easy conversation. I had to explain everything, relive more than I wanted to, convince someone I wasn't acting out of bitterness or drama. But in the end, she agreed to help. No hesitation, just quiet resolve. I'll make sure it gets to her. Only her, she said. Are you sure you want to do this? No, I wasn't. But I was doing it anyway. I spent hours making clean copies of every page. Not the originals, I still needed those, but enough to paint the full picture. Police reports, text messages, photos, medical records, pages of journal entries that I never intended for another soul to read, now carefully selected and placed in order. I added one last thing, a handwritten note. It wasn't long or dramatic, just real. You don't know me well, but I know the man you married. I know what he's capable of, not because someone told me, but because I lived it. This isn't about revenge. This is about making sure you have the full story so you can protect yourself and your child. I hope none of this is familiar to you. I say, I hope he changed, but if anything feels wrong, I'm here. I believe you. You're not crazy, and you're not alone. I sealed the papers in a manila envelope. No return address, no signature, just her name. Then I waited. Days passed like molasses. I barely breathed every time my phone buzzed. I kept imagining the worst. Her not believing me, him finding the envelope first, her confronting him and paying the price. I even considered calling the whole thing off, but it was too late. The wheels were already turning. Then, about a week later, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Hi, I got your envelope. Can we talk? My stomach dropped. We met at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town, neutral ground, early in the morning when no one else was around. She was already there when I walked in, the envelope beside her on the table, opened. Some of the pages were marked with sticky notes. Her hands trembled as she picked up the first one. Can you walk me through this? She asked softly. Page by page, we went through it. She didn't interrupt, just asked questions, asked for context, compared what I wrote to what he had told her. By the time we hit the court records and the official victim impact statement, she sat in silence for a long time. Then she looked up at me, tears in her eyes, and said, I believe you. I didn't expect that moment to break me, but it did. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know. I didn't want to know, but now I do. Then she took a deep breath. I think I need to pack a bag. She left that day. Not forever, not with a dramatic slam of the door, but with quiet resolve. She packed a bag, told him she was visiting her parents for a few days, and didn't look back. She didn't tell him why, not yet. She said she needed time to figure out what came next. I didn't press her. I just told her I was here no matter what. And then I went home and braced for the fallout. At first, there was silence, a strange, heavy quiet like the moment after a storm when you're not sure if it's really over. But then the whispers started. A text from an old acquaintance. Did you seriously go out of your way to blow up someone else's marriage? A DM from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. You're inserting yourself into something that isn't your business. Even a distant relative chimed in with, people change. Maybe he's not that guy anymore. Maybe you just couldn't let it go. Each message felt like a tiny punch to the gut. They didn't know the years I spent rebuilding myself from the ground up. They didn't know the nights I woke up gasping from dreams that felt too real. They didn't know the version of me that couldn't recognize her own reflection, flinching at shadows in her own home. They just saw a headline, X interferes in current marriage, and maybe I could have stayed quiet. Maybe I could have shrugged and told myself it wasn't my problem anymore. Maybe I could have left that binder in storage, let her find out in her own time, if she ever did. But here's what they don't understand. I didn't do it for him. I didn't do it to her. I did it because I know what it feels like to think you're crazy when in fact you're in danger. I know what it's like to lie to your family, to cover bruises with excuses, to hold your breath when a door creaks because you don't know what version of the man is on the other side. I know what it's like to love someone who breaks you and to blame yourself for the breaking. And I know deeply, painfully, that if someone had handed me that binder years ago, maybe I would have left sooner. Maybe I would have spared myself years of silence and self-hate. So yes, I interfered. Yes, I crossed a line. But I crossed it to save someone from drowning in the same ocean I nearly died in. She didn't owe me anything, not belief, not gratitude, not even a reply. But she looked me in the eye with tears rolling down her face and said, Thank you, I didn't want to see it. But now that I do, I can't unsee it. And I needed to see it. That was enough. Let people talk. Let them guess and whisper and roll their eyes. They weren't there. They didn't live it. They didn't barely survive it. She's safe now, or at least safer. And if that means being called dramatic or messy or a troublemaker, So be it. Because I didn't blow up her life, I gave her the match. She lit it herself. And sometimes that's the only way to find your way out of the dark.